Thank you very, very much for joining me this evening. I appreciate it. What we're going to be covering is everything that you ever wanted to know about the right way to launch a product. So as product managers, more often than not, we find ourselves in situations where either we're launching a brand new product, which is always very exciting, or probably more likely we're launching a new version of an existing product that we have. Now the good news is that the steps that we go through for both of these activities are pretty much the same. But what's very, very important, and which oftentimes gets overlooked by product managers, is how you start a product off. The steps that you do at the beginning of the product launch cycle are critically important to that product over the life of the product. So you have to get the start right in order to generate the sales and the profits farther down the road that you want to get out of your product. And that's exactly what we're going to be talking about tonight. Let's make sure that you do all the right things and that you do them in the right sequence and that you do them the right way so your product will be off to a good start. So thank you very much for joining me, and that's what we're going to be covering tonight. Now we're going to actually cover 5 separate topics tonight. We're going to start out talking about product jobs, which is just sort of a fancy way of talking about market segmentation. So, every product manager would love to have an opportunity to sell their product to everybody in the world. But of course you can't do that because not everybody wants your product. So what you need to do is take that big wide world of possible people who could buy your product and break it down to just those people who have a problem that can be solved by your product. And you have to identify these people simply because then you can focus all of your time, energy, and talent in marketing and communication programs on reaching them and telling them about your product and why your product is so great. But how you figure out these people, who these people are, is the secret behind market segmentation. And we're going to take it one step farther on this webinar. Market segmentation is the traditional way of finding your customers. It turns out it doesn't always work. We'll talk about that, and we'll also talk about a better way of doing market segmentation. Next, we're going to go to market needs. Just because you or your company has had a great idea for a fabulous new product, and just because you understand, what it would look like and how people would use it, doesn't necessarily mean that your customers want it. What you've identified as a need may not be that big of a need to them. So the second step in doing a correct product launch is to evaluate the market need for your product. And unfortunately, I speak from experience on this. There's nothing sadder than going through all the effort to launch a product only to get the product out to market and discover there's no market for it. There isn't a big customer demand for it. All right, the next thing that we're going to talk about is competitive alternatives. In a perfect world, a product manager's product would be the only solution that a customer would have when they were looking to solve a particular problem. But we all know that that's not true. You have competitors. There's other companies out there that make a product that's either this, very similar to your product, or another product that does something close to what your product does. And when customers are looking to solve their problem, they'll either select you or they'll select them. What we often forget about as product managers, because it's easy to focus on the other guy, is that our customers have yet another choice. And their choice is to do nothing, or to do something that has nothing to do with buying a product from either you or your competitors. And you need to identify that, because that is one more option your customer has. And when you're putting together your marketing material, what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to make sure that your product presents a more compelling reason to your customers than either your competition or the do nothing opportunity. After that, we're going to move on to company distinctions. So when I'm a customer and I have a problem and I want to go ahead and purchase a solution to my problem, I'm going to take a look at the various companies that are offering solutions, and I'm going to compare and contrast those companies. And the question is I'll select the company that best matches my needs. And that's great. But the question I have for you is, what makes your company any different from the other companies that are offering solutions to customers? What makes your company stand out? When a customer thinks about your company, what comes to mind first? You know, company distinctions are a critical part of helping customers make a buying decision, and more importantly, helping them decide to select your product. And finally, the last thing that we're going to be talking about tonight is your solution USP, which is a unique selling proposition. A solution USP is actually just sort of a short paragraph, but it summarizes why you're building this product, what problem this product solves, and why a customer should buy it from you. And this is a critical piece of information to have, because as we all know, even as you start to develop and create a product inside your own company, there will be people inside your own company who are going to ask you, why are you doing this? What do you hope to accomplish? Having your USP allow you to answer that question. And of course, when you take your product to market, your first set of customers will be asking you exactly the same thing. You know, I hadn't seen you in this space before. What is this product? Why are you here? Why are you offering it? Your solution USP is your answer to that question. So these are the 5 things we're going to cover tonight. I think you're going to get a lot of great information out of it. Most importantly, I think you're going to get great information that you can immediately take back and start to use. All right, so before we get too far into this, let me go ahead and take just a moment and introduce myself. I am Dr. Jim Anderson. I've been a product manager for the last 25 years. Now, during that time, I've had a chance to work for 4 of the largest companies out there. That'd be Boeing, Siemens, Alcatel, and Verizon. Now, mixed in with that, I've had an opportunity to work for 3 separate startups, Arcatel, Santera, and Enlogic. So I've worked for organizations where I was just a member of a very large marketing organizations. I've worked for some companies where I was the marketing department. Now, I would like to tell you that over that 25-year period, I've had an opportunity to be a product manager for 10 different products. And I'd like to be able to tell you that each one of those products was a fantastic success, but that wouldn't be correct. I have been in charge of my share of products that were failures, that just did not live up to their expectations. So the information that I bring to tonight's webinar is a set of experiences born of both successes and some failures. What I want to do is share with you the information so that you don't have to go through the same learning experience that I did. I want to make it so that you can move forward faster and you don't have to repeat some of the mistakes that I've made during my career. All right, let's go on and get started with this, shall we? So before we dive in to the process of what it takes to successfully launch a product, let's talk about you for just a moment, okay? And let's talk about what it takes to become a successful product manager. Being a product manager is a tricky job, and in part it's a tricky job because I would be willing to bet that a lot of people at your company don't quite know what you do, all right? So a product manager is, generally speaking, part of the marketing department, and we have got sort of a strange job because we don't actually really produce that much. We really act as sort of a bridge or a communication path between a lot of different organizations, between the development team and the sales team, between customers and the sales team, and between your senior management and everybody else. And it's a great job, it's an exciting job, it's a challenging job, but it's important that you know what you have to do in your particular job. So to be successful, there's actually 3 things that you have to have. And I call this the STOMP pyramid of product management power. So the 3 components that every product manager needs to have in order to be successful starts with attitude, okay? How you view your product, how you view your company, and how you view your customers are critical factors in determining just how successful you're going to be as a product manager. Next comes skills and tactics. It's knowing how to segment a market, knowing how to correctly do pricing. All those things that together make up the bag of tricks that a product manager does. And finally, of course, specialized knowledge. And this has to do with, understanding your product, understanding how your product works, understanding your market, and understanding, of course, your customers and the challenges that they have. Now, you've got 3 components to being a successful product manager. But what a lot of product managers don't realize is that probably 80 to 90% of your personal career success depends on your attitude. And truly, it's how you view your product, how you view your customers, that's going to determine how successful you're going to be as a product manager. It's not the skills and tactics that you have, and it's not even really the specialized knowledge you have about your market. It all comes back to you and the way you view the world. And I can't stress how important that is. And the sad thing is that as I work with product managers, they're always working really hard to boost their skills and tactics. They're always looking for ways to get more specialized knowledge about the market or their customers or what their customers are thinking. And I'm not going to discount that that's important to have. Okay, but what really matters a lot more than all that is your attitude or your outlook in terms of your product and your chances of being successful. Which of course leads us to the interesting question of what drives a product manager's attitude. Well, it all starts with inputs. And so this is sort of an important question for you to spend just a moment thinking about. As a product manager, where are you currently getting your inputs from? Well, we get our inputs from the people that we spend our time with. And I'll bet you have some salespeople who like your product, who go out, who sell it, who are very successful, and who say good things about your product. Likewise, in every company, there's salespeople who struggle with your product, who think that it's costs too much, customers don't need it, competition has a better product, we're behind the times, doesn't have the right feature set, all that sort of stuff like that. You do have your own set of negative salespeople. You may have some negative management, you may have some negative developers. There's good inputs and there's bad inputs, and the question I have for you is, what kind of inputs are you currently taking in? Who are you spending your time with? And it's so important because the inputs that you take in as a product manager drive your thoughts, okay? The more inputs that you get telling you one thing, the more thoughts you're going to have. Those thoughts then translate into your expectations for your products. If somebody's saying that you've got the best product ever, that customers love it, that it solves their problems, that they just couldn't imagine life before your product became available, you're going to have great expectations for your products. Likewise, if you're hanging out with salespeople or other people who are saying this is the wrong product, this is the wrong market, we're not going to be successful, your expectations or your dreams for your product are going to start to go down. And that's a big deal because it's your expectations that drive the creation of collateral, of marketing plans, of your discussions with your development team, and ultimately the creation will lead on to product success. So you can understand that where you spend your time, where you get your inputs, has a huge impact on the eventual success of your product. As product managers, we like to think, well, it's whether or not customers buy the product, it's whether or not we have the right technology built into the product, it's whether or not we've got the right salespeople. But I'm here to tell you that's not true. A lot of the success of your product has to do with you as being the product manager. And whether or not you're going to be successful or not depends on your input, your thoughts, your expectations, and ultimately it all leads up to your product success. In Formula One car racing, they have a saying, and they say that your car goes where your eyes go. And what this really means is you never look at the wall, because if you look at the wall, you're going to crash. So as a product manager, you have to be very careful, and you have to manage your inputs, and you have to make sure you never look at the wall because you don't want your product to crash. Okay, so we will now be talking about product launch secrets, but before we get there, make sure you have the right inputs coming into you as a product manager so that your product will be a success. Okay, we're going to be talking about a portion of the STOMP product management system. The STOMP system starts out in preparing and planning, making sure that you get all the details right. It moves into a do phase and then finally into a deliver phase, which ensures that you deliver the right product with the right features to the right customers. And that's where all of your sales and profits come from. But before you can get to the sales and profits, you have to do your preparing and planning. You have to get things right. You have to do the correct type of product launch. And I can't stress this enough. Too many product managers, if you take a look and see where they're spending their time and what they're doing, right off the bat, start worrying about things that have to do with delivering a product. And the answer is, don't spend your time there. What you need to do is you need to do your homework. You have to study your market, have to study your customer, you have to determine what they need. Okay, and that's the right place to start, and that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. Now, this is a quick overview of the STOMP system. The STOMP system consists of 7 different stages, and it's how you take a product from the very beginning to ultimately selling it to your customer. Tonight, we're going to be talking about the know stage, which is where you do your product launch activities. What you do in the know stage leads into the plan stage, into the execute stage, and so on. Now, each one of the stages in the STOMP system is dealing with trying to get answers to a very specific question. In the know stage, what we're trying to get an answer to is, what do your customers really want? Because this is the core of any product launch. You can launch any product, but if it's not the product that your customers want, then you will have effectively ended up wasting your time. And time is too precious for you to be doing that. So we're going to start our discussion tonight talking about product jobs, which is sort of an odd way to say it, but let's spend just a moment and think about it. So look, a customer who buys your product isn't buying your product because they like your product. Your customer is buying your product because they've got a problem or they have a need, and they believe that your product is going to be the thing that's going to help them solve whatever that issue or need that they have is. So really, your product's sort of being hired to take care of a job. And if you start to think about it that way and don't focus as much on your customer, then I think all of a sudden things are going to become a lot more simple for you. So let's start things off by talking about traditional market segmentation. Whenever you have a new product or a new version of your old product, the very first thing you want to do is identify who you're going to sell it to. And you know, what's interesting is new versions of products, sometimes this is the most difficult thing to do, because oftentimes other people in your company are going to assume that the product will just continue to be sold to whoever you're currently selling it to. And that's not always the case. If you've added new features or if you made some changes to it, you may have opened up brand new markets. And part of the product launch process gives you an opportunity to take a look at the product with a fresh pair of eyes and determine if you've expanded your market or perhaps you've shrunk it. Maybe you've removed some features or made some changes. That means it's going to be more focused on a very specific set of customers. No matter what, this is the time to do some market segmentation. The very first thing, and probably the golden rule of market segmentation, is look, you can't sell to everybody. Okay, fabulous product, wonderful product, you've done a very good job in creating it, not a problem with that whatsoever. But guess what? You're not going to be able to sell it to everybody. So you have to figure out who you can sell it to. There's another key rule to remember here. Market segmentation is not just about your customers, although there is a lot of focus on that. It's also about how you want to sell to them. The best example I can give you of this is, for example, if I'm manufacturing a product that I can sell in England, okay, and it turns out that there's a lot of customers in Spain who would like to buy my product, that's not really going to do me any good because I can't get my product out of England for whatever reason, right? So when I segment my market, I'm going to have to exclude all of those Spanish customers who would really like to buy my product simply because I can't get it to them. So when you do market segmentation, you need to take a look at your company's capabilities and determine whether or not they're able to actually get the product into the customer's hands. And if they can't, then that has to be part of your segmentation considerations. So let's talk about segmenting the market. And you've probably done this before, you've probably had a good discussion about it, but let's make sure that we're all on the same page here. So the best part of segmenting the market is that you always start in the same place. You start with everybody in the world, okay? And that's a fantastic feeling. Of course my product's going to be a success because potentially I could sell it to everybody in the world. Now what we start to do is, the very first thing to do is we start to make that collection of people that we could sell our product to a little bit smaller. Look, we can only sell it to people who do the thing that can have the problem that your product solves. So we need an example here. Let's think about this for a moment. Let's say you were selling a better hammer. Your hammer is better at hitting a nail. When you hit the nail with your hammer, it goes in straighter and it goes in faster, and it's easier to drive a nail into a piece of wood when people use your hammer. Fantastic. That's wonderful. That's great news. So the people who do the thing that can have the problem that your problem solves basically is people who are hammering nails into wood, and that's obviously not everybody in the world. It'll definitely be people doing construction work. It'll be people doing projects at home. So that'll be, make up the fundamental part of your audience. Great. So that's a good collection of people. Now, our next step in segmenting the market is to make that a little bit smaller yet. This is going to be people who have the problem that your product solves. So take a look at our hammer. Our hammer allows you to drive a nail into wood straighter, and it allows you to get the nail into wood with fewer, strikings with the hammer. You have to do less hammering. So we need to find people who aren't doing a good job of putting nails into wood straight, and we need to find people who get tired when they're hammering nails in. If you're a construction worker and you're doing it all day long, your arm's going to be hurting by the end of the day. You might be looking for a better hammer, and that's exactly the people we want to talk to. Let's take this one step farther. What we're looking for is people who might buy a product like yours. Okay, so just because people have a problem doesn't necessarily mean that they're looking for a solution. So this smaller group of people is people who know that they have a problem and people who are committed to solving their problem. Okay, so now we're getting a little bit closer to the people who might actually buy our product. If we move to the very bottom of this particular triangle, we find people who might buy your product, right? So assuming that they don't have any problems buying a better hammer, okay, assuming that they're on the market for another hammer, these are exactly the people that you want to appeal to. And this final collection of people is critical because all of your collateral, all of your advertising, all of your promotions, any sort of discounts you do, it needs to be targeted towards this tiny little triangle at the bottom of the pyramid, and you don't want to waste your time, energy, or talent on anybody else out there, because the rest of the people really probably are not going to buy your product. So this is effectively, in a nutshell, what segmenting the market is. Now, how you find these people is a little bit of a challenge, but that's the ultimate goal of what we're trying to do here. Okay, now basically when you segment the market, you take groups of people and you break them up into, obviously, groups, smaller groups, okay? Those smaller groups have three characteristics that are critical. The first one is homogeneity, okay? This means that they all have a common need within the segment. In our hammer example, these are people who struggle to drive a nail into wood straight and people who get tired hammering, okay? Distinction. Now this means that each one of the groups that you create has to be distinct from another group. In our hammer example, construction workers would be distinct from home hobbyists, right? And that's very important because you want to be able to target your market towards a unique group without spilling over to another group. And then the reaction has to be the same. So this is actually a critical one. You want a similar response from the segment, which means that if you present them with an ad, you want the same response to come from all of them. And it's critical because if you can't get the same reaction from everybody in a segment, you're going to end up having to come up with customized marketing. And based on the number of people in that segment, that's going to be killer. So what you really want is one ad or one promotion that works for everybody in a given segment. Those are critical distinctions that define the differences between segments. Now, good news for you guys. I've got a free gift for you just because you're participating in tonight's webinar. I have a free report called Market Segmentation Secrets. In this report, I'm going to lay out 9 things that the segments that you put together for your product need to have in order for them to be useful as a product manager. And the way you can use this is that when you're segmenting the market for your particular product, you can compare the segments that you've come up with to these 9 things. And if it matches to the 9, congratulations, you're done. If it doesn't match to the 9 characteristics that a segment needs to have, then you need to keep on. You need to do additional refinements. But basically, by using this report, you'll be able to determine when you've correctly segmented the market for your product. So it's really valuable, and you're going to get it as a free giveaway once this call is done tonight. Okay, so let's talk about some market segmentation examples because we can talk about it, but it's probably better if we take a look at it. So Apple Computer Corporation is a pretty famous company. They've had a classic way of segmenting the market, and they've done this pretty much since day one. They break the market up into 6 distinct groups: home, education, small business, large business, government, and all others. And what's interesting is that you can see this type of breakup in their activities in their advertising. They have completely different ad campaigns that go after education, after go home, small business, large business, etc. What's interesting is that somebody who is a member of one of these groups can actually be a member of another group. For example, you could have a school teacher who gets exposed to the Apple education advertising, but of course that school teacher goes home and then gets exposed to the homeowner advertising and such like. So you can have members who belong to multiple segments, but you create a separate advertising marketing campaign for each one of the segments. Now, that's sort of a traditional way for segmenting the market. Over on the right hand of the screen, you'll see that there's a candy bar company. It had a different way of segmenting the market. They segmented it based on what they called oral satisfactors. Basically, if you walk into a convenience store and you're hungry, what are you going to buy? Well, you can buy candies, cookies, soft drinks, bagged chips, or candy bars, right? So they segmented the market based on what their customers' choices were, which was critical to them because then they could go ahead and target customers who traditionally buy, for example, cookies or soft drinks and try and switch them to buying candy bars. So how you choose to segment the market is up to you, and it probably has a great deal to do with the type of product you have and the type of customers that you're going after. You shouldn't feel constrained to having to do it the traditional way. Now, the question is how can you separate your customers? How can you go ahead and segment your customers? It depends, really. Are you selling directly to individual consumers? Are you a business to consumer or a B2C type of company? Or are you trying to sell to businesses? Are you a business to business or B2B type of customer? If you're selling directly to end users, there's a lot of different ways to segment those users, but you need to do it in a way that matters to your particular product. There's age, family size, gender, economic status, geographic location. Those are all critical ones. You can dive one layer deeper, get into lifestyles and values and life stage if it matters to your product. Now, if you're selling to businesses, then you do it a little bit differently. Obviously, size of the business, who they sell to, where they're located, what sorts of components they use in their products, what products they make, what their reputation is, what their pricing is, high or low, and how they actually get their products out to market through distribution and channels. Now, if you sell a product that you sell to distributors or channels that then pass it on to the end user customers, you've got a tougher job ahead of you because you're actually going to have to segment the market twice. You're going to have to segment the market in terms of the businesses that you sell to, the channels and distributors, but then you're also going to have to segment in terms of the end users who buy your product. So you have to stay on top of both of those segments because your product has to actually appeal to both of them, and that's critical. Now, we sort of just got done with a discussion of what I like to call traditional market segmenting, and here's the sort of the ugly truth. So in the United States, every year, 30,000 new products are introduced. 90% of those products fail. Now, look, bright, smart companies, bright, smart people, big marketing teams work on those products that fail. And so the question is, what's wrong? And it turns out the answer is that traditional market segmentation has some problems. See, what we do when we do traditional market segmentation is that we take customers and we group them into segments. No problems with that. However, we then create our products for what's called the average customer, all right, in that segment. And the average customer may not exist, but it's sort of a combination of all the characteristics of the customers who are in that segment. The problem is that customers don't match the average customer. And that's a huge issue because then all of a sudden, product success is a bit of a gamble. There's not a single customer necessarily who needs that product that we've created. Instead, what we've done is we've taken a big guess that we can come up with a product that will appeal to most of them. So there's got to be a better way to do this. Good news, there is. Okay? And the way we do it correctly is that we, instead of looking at the customers and trying to guess as to what they want, instead we take a look at the market from the customer eyes. Okay? And we talked about this a little bit at the beginning. Customers hire products to do a job. Okay? So if as product managers we take the time to understand what jobs customers are hiring products for, then we'll know what product to make. And as a product manager, you can then design a product to do the job that your customers are hiring for, right? Now we got to go one step farther. When we deliver our product to the market, we have to deliver it in a way so that we enforce what it's supposed to be used for. When customers look at our product, we have to clearly tie that product to the job that we've designed it for, so that it's a no-brainer for our customers. They go, well, but of course, that's what I would use that product for. And if you do it this way, then all of a sudden life gets a lot easier. In the world of marketing, there's a classic saying. It says, nobody ever buys a drill because they want a drill. They buy a drill because they want holes. Okay? Now, if you're a product manager in charge of a drill, and you do traditional market segmentation, you may discover, males between 25 and 45 buy the majority of drills. And oh, by the way, they like to watch football and drink beer. And if you have that information, maybe you'd go out and do a partnership with a beer company and somehow package your drills with a case of beer. And maybe you'd get some sort of football team to do a promotion of your particular type of drills, which is all pretty standard stuff. However, if instead you take the time to say, listen, I want to understand the job that my customers are hiring this drill to do, you'd understand it's really all about the holes. So you'd say, listen, maybe if I made a drill that can make holes of different size very easily, maybe if I made a drill that it could do different depths of a hole, or perhaps if I made a drill that was able to make holes faster than anybody else's drill, all of a sudden you've come up with a product that has a lot of appeal for customers, because you've thought about not the customer, but rather the job that the customer is going to be hiring the drill to do. So that's what we mean when we talk about product jobs. Now, there are 3 aspects to every job. Okay, and if you know how to improve a product, it has to come from not really understanding the typical customer, as though you do a classic market segmentation, but rather you understand the job. And the goal of a product manager has to be to improve the 3 things: the social, the functional, and the emotional dimensions of the product, so that it does its job better. Remember, social is how the product helps your customer interact with other people. Functional is how it actually does the job that it's being hired for. And emotional, of course, is how your product makes your customer feel when they're solving their problem. A couple of classic examples of companies that did a good job of this. The first one would be eBay. Now, what's interesting, we all know eBay as being the online auction company, but it wasn't really created originally for that. The guy who invented eBay invented it as a way for people to get rid of junk that they didn't want anymore. It turns out that he created an online auction company to do that, but he understood what the job was. It was to clear stuff out of the house. Another great example of that is the American company Swiffer. Now, they make basically a disposable mop. If you've ever had to mop something up, you know that mops are generally dirty and smelly things, and there's just no possible way to get those things clean. And that's unattractive, no matter where you store it or how you store it. And when you're done, it's wet and it's nasty, and you put it in the corner, and it's just not pleasant at all. The Swiffer people came up with a disposable, basically piece of paper or piece of plastic that you put around the end of a mop-like device. You clean up a spill or what have you, and then you peel off the disposable sheet, throw it away. No mess, no smell, no problems. And it's been a very, very successful product because they took the time to understand the job that their customers were doing. I think we can all learn something from that. Now, there's a secret benefit to segmenting your product by the jobs that it does. And what happens more often than not is that you discover that the market for your product is a lot larger than you originally thought that it was. So let's think about this for a moment. The classic case is Arm & Hammer's baking soda. Baking soda is a product that you find in your kitchen. People use baking soda to make cookies and cakes and all sorts of things in the kitchen. It's a food, right? Well, when the Arm& Hammer people talked with their customers and asked them how they were using baking soda, they had quite of a surprise. It turns out that people have been adding baking soda to laundry to make their clothes smell fresher. They've been putting baking soda into their refrigerators to capture bad odors and make their refrigerators smell better. There's a whole bunch of personal maintenance stuff that people use baking soda for. And then, of course, baking soda is a great, basically abrasive cleaner that you can use to get metal clean. So when they asked their customers, they discovered that the market for their product was a lot larger than they had originally understood. So, the interesting thing is if you have a talk with your customer about how they're actually using your product, you just might be surprised that they're using it in ways that you may have never imagined possible. And as product managers, we always love it when our market becomes larger. Now, once you've gone ahead and segmented your market, okay, once you understand sort of who your target audience is, now you have to evaluate that target audience's need for the type of product that your company can create. Okay, there are going to be 3 goals that are coming out of this process. First off, you're going to want to identify the requirements for your product. You're going to want to estimate the size of the market for your product. Once again, if the market size comes back to be too small for your company, then you will have prevented yourself from spending a lot of time trying to go after a market that just wasn't going to be there for you. And finally, you're going to want to document why potential customers would buy a product from your company as opposed to selecting one from one of the other companies that offers a similar sort of product. If you can do this, then you will have done a very good job of identifying your market needs. The very first step, of course, is to come up with product requirements, and we've all done product requirements. What's interesting about this is that the size of your market oftentimes drives how you build up your market requirements. If you have a market that has relatively few customers, then it may be possible for you to have a direct relationship with the people who are going to potentially buy your product. You can have a direct business relationship with them. The example on this one is if I was in the business of selling 5-carat diamond rings, the market for that's not going to be that large because they're really, really expensive, right? So I could potentially collect my information from RFPs, if people gave me requirements documents, maybe orders. When they come in and place orders, they could tell me exactly what they wanted. Meetings with customers would be incredibly valuable for my 5-carat diamond ring. What kind of cut, color, clarity did they want to have? If there was any sort of warranty that they insisted on, that would reveal what was important to them. And perhaps I wouldn't even deal with the customers themselves, but rather a representative that the customer sent to meet with me would have all the information about what the customer was looking for in the product that I had. Now, the majority of us actually fall into the second category where we have an indirect relationship with our customers. And the reason is because there's a lot of customers out there, or at least a lot of potential customers out there. Too many for us to actually sit down and have a discussion with about what they would like to have in our product. So instead, generally what we end up doing is we end up meeting with the distributors and resellers who actually interface directly with the customers. And we ask them, hey, what do we have to do to our product to make it easier for you to sell to the end customers? This can be either a characteristic of the product itself, a product feature, or maybe it's how we deliver or bill the distributors and resellers for it. It's oftentimes as product managers we get caught up in our product, but if we take a look at the process by which our product gets to distributors and resellers, sometimes it opens up some opportunities for us to change that distribution network, and that's what they really want. If we need to capture product requirements, we can do it in a lot of different ways when we have a lot of customers. We can do surveys. Surveys are always very, very good. A focus group is quite good also, where we sit down with just a handful of our potential customers and have a talk with them about what they're looking for in a product. Market research is good. Interviews with customers, fantastic. Generally interviews with customers who have already selected our product and have them tell us exactly what they were looking for and why they picked our particular product. Customer service feedback is another great thing to do. Anytime one of your customer service representatives has an interaction with a customer, if they can collect more information and get that information to you as the product manager, you'll know a little bit more about what your customers are looking for, and you'll have a better understanding of how you can change or adapt your product to better meet their particular needs. Now I've got another great free gift for you that you'll be getting after this particular webinar. I've got a report for you, how to create product requirements that work. Now remember, requirements, they sort of bridge the world between customers and your development team. And I've got a 10-step system that's going to show you how you can create product requirements that are going to capture that voice of the customer, okay? And it's going to allow you to put or create requirements that are going to be specific enough that are going to help your development to actually create the product that you want to be able to deliver to your sales team. So it's a delicate balance of trying to grab the idea that the customer is expressing to you, but do it in a way that you'll be able to hand it off to your development team and be confident that they're going to give you what you need. I've got the system for you. I'm going to share it with you in my report, and you're going to get that report once this webinar is done. All right. So let's move on to the next thing that we want to tackle as part of our product launch activities here. We want to figure out just how big your product's market is, okay? And this is something your management is always going to be asking you anytime you're getting ready to roll out either a new product or an updated version of the product, because ultimately they want to know how much money they can plan on making from this product. So there's a lot of different ways to do it. What's worked out well for me during my 25-year career is what I call the TAM, SAM, SOM technique. And here's how it works. So TAM stands for Total Available Market. And this consists of everyone who has the problem that your product solves. So this is how much they're going to spend to solve the problem, all right? So that's the total spending to solve the problem that your product tackles. Now, inside of that, a smaller circle is the SAM, or the Served Available Market. And this is everyone who might buy a product like yours. So what you need to understand is that a lot of people out there are going to solve this problem in a way that is different than your product. All right? In the case of the hammer that we talked about a little more before, somebody might go out and buy like a power hammer, or somebody might go out and hire somebody else to do the hammering for them. These are all fine solutions, but they're not going to be buying your hammer from you, okay? So they get excluded from the SAM. So the SAM is basically everyone who might buy a product like yours. Now inside of the SAM is the SOM, or the share of market, and this is actually the market that you could potentially capture with your product. Now the reason that your share of market is smaller than the served available market is that, listen, your competitors are going to make sales, okay? Customers are going to purchase other people's products, and that will mean that the market, the SAM, is always going to be larger than your share of market. Now, a little bit of advice based on some painful personal history here. Sometimes when product managers are trying to estimate their share of market, they make the mistake of saying, listen, my share of market is simply a percentage of the SAM, of the served available market. So if SAM is, let's say, $100 million, I think I'm going to capture 2% of that. So I'll capture $2 million of that market this year. You really don't want to do that, and the reason you don't want to do that is that all too often market sizes change. They can either become quite large, or maybe they shrink over the course of a year. And so if you specify your SOM as a percentage, what it was at the beginning of the year is not necessarily what it's going to be at the end of the year. A much better way to calculate your SOM is to say, hey, listen, this is how much my product costs. Maybe it's $1,000, maybe it's $10,000, maybe it's $100,000, okay? This is the number of units of products I think I'm going to sell through my sales people, through my channels, and through any other way that I might possibly sell it this year. And it comes out to be a number. Let's say, 1,000. I'll sell 1,000 units. You multiply that by the price, and then you divide that by your SAM, and you'll come up with a percentage of the SAM that you're going to be able to capture. That's a much more justifiable way to calculate your share of market. But if you can present these three numbers to your senior management, you're going to get their buy-in for the product. They may ask you how you've calculated, but as long as you have the backup material that shows how you calculated this, you'll be in a good position. All right, so let's move on to competitive alternatives. Once again, in a perfect world, your product would be the only possible solution that your customers could select. That's never going to happen. Your customers are always going to have multiple choices, and your product's just going to be one of them. As a product manager, you have a responsibility to be aware of all the choices that your customer is facing so that you can design both your product and your marketing program to deal with those other competitive alternatives. The most important thing you can do as a product manager is to, when you take a look at the market and when you're identifying who the potential competitors are, you take a look at the market from your customer's vantage point. You see what your customers see when they look to hire a product to solve their problem. And this is actually really a very critical thing, and it's something that a lot of product managers don't do. Let me explain this to you. So when you're doing research on exactly who your competitors are, oftentimes product managers, pick up some market research reports, take a look at it, and they come up with a list. Don't do that. Instead, you have to do market research two different ways. The first one is you have to play the role of a customer. And listen, so you have a customer who has a problem. They don't know as much about this market as you do. You're the product manager. You know more about it than anybody else potentially in the world, right? So if you're a customer and you've got a problem and you have to solve it, you want to solve it, how are you going to do it? Well, it's the 21st century. They're probably going to go to Google. The question is, what words are they going to type into Google when they go looking to solve this particular problem, right? Good question, don't know. But you should probably find it out, because if you can discover what words they're going to use when they're searching for a solution, you can discover what shows up when they do that type of search. Another thing a customer is going to do is they're going to talk with their peers. They're going to talk with other people in their industry to find out if they've faced the same problem. What they're really looking for is somebody who had the same problem, who found a solution, who applied the solution, and the problem went away. Okay, so you need to find out if there's anybody else in the industry who's had that experience, and ideally you'd like them to start to recommend your product. Your customer may go out and purchase some research. They may get some books. They may buy some reports. They might buy something like that. If that's going to happen, you need to understand what they're purchasing. You need to make sure that your product is described or reviewed in that material. And finally, your customer may end up going to some classes or seminars or conferences where somebody will be talking about the type of problem that they had, type of solution that they implemented, and what the final results of that were. You need to be up on this. You need to be aware of this. You need to understand what's going through your customer's head as they're trying to solve these problems. Now, once you get done with that, you have to put on your product manager hat and you have to do some research of the market. You have access potentially to the market research reports, and remember, these market research reports will list every possible company out there who might be providing a solution. You need to do your own set of Google searches. You probably want to reach out and talk with customers to better understand how they're seeing the world, and of course you always have the ability to conduct some sort of focus group in order to understand sort of how they're seeing things, what they're looking for, and what sort of features customers value in any sort of solution that they might be looking for. Ultimately, when the customer has collected all of their possible ways of solving their problem, it's going to break down into three separate groups. And the three separate groups, first off, is going to be your primary competition. So this is another company that offers a product that in your customer's eyes does basically the same thing that your product does. So they're sort of, not quite, but sort of indistinguishable, or at least they both serve the same function. Now there's going to be another group of products that are these secondary competition products, okay? Now these products may do some or all of the type of functionality that your product does, and the customer is aware of them, but they don't see them as a primary sort of selection. And finally, there's what I call the outliers. And these are products that, once again, may do some or all of the type of solution that the customer is looking for. However, the customer is not currently aware of them. Outliers are actually very important. You don't have to worry about them on a normal daily basis, but you do need to keep your eye on them, because outliers can jump to become primary competition very quickly if they get a positive press write-up, if they have a fantastic new technology, or if something like that happens. Another thing that you need to keep in mind is that the customer always has another option, and that's the do nothing option, right? If they just choose to live with the problem as it is today, because to get a solution is too expensive, too tricky to make a decision, or would take too long to implement, then you've lost, right? So competitive alternatives always have to come from the customer's perspective, not from yours. As a product manager, it's ironic to say this, you're too smart. You're too aware of too many different options the customer has. You need instead to see the competitive landscape from your customer's point of view. Now, after you've got that all taken care of, when the customer makes a buying decision, says, listen, I'm actually going to purchase a product to solve my particular problem, they're going to take a look at the various companies that are offering solutions and try to choose among them. The question is there anything about your company that's going to cause the customer to go, hey, I think they're going to offer me a good product, I'm going to select them. So this is all about company distinctions. Okay, and there can be a lot of different ways to make your company distinct. Okay, your company may have a unique history. How did the company start? How did it get to where it is today? What is your company's story that makes it stand apart from all of the other companies that are in the market? It may be the people who work for your company. Where did they come from? What are their experiences? What are their talents? What makes them so special? Okay, and more importantly, different from the people that are at other companies. Maybe it's your customer service. Maybe you guys do fantastic things as far as taking care of your customers. It could be your price. Remember that company Walmart built an entire company based on offering low prices. It could be your company's vision. You know, your company's view of the future and where they want to take the company to could be so compelling that your customers say, listen, I believe in that vision, I want to be part of that vision, I'm on board, I'm going to select a product from you because I think by doing that, I'll be able to participate in the vision when it arrives. It could also just be that the other companies that you've sold your product to are ones that the customer wants to be included with, and they want to be in that group. So by selecting your product, they'll be able to join that club. Or it could be something else. You know, there could be some other thing that makes your company distinct in the eyes of your customer. And as a product manager, you need to find out what that is, because understanding what your company's distinct advantages are is going to be critical as you put together collateral and advertising, and also as you have discussions with your sales teams and tell them what to bring up when they're talking with customers trying to sell your product. Now we're going to move on to the last stage of the product launch process, and this is going to be creating the unique selling proposition for your particular product. What makes your product so special? Now remember, the USP is simply basically a short paragraph that as a product manager you create. And this short paragraph has a role to play both inside your company. I'm talking with all the people who keep asking you, why are you working on that product? What are you trying to do? Who are you going to sell it to? Why would they buy it? And also you use it with customers who say, who are you and what is this product and why should I be interested in it? So it has a dual role. Any USP has three questions that it's going to answer. First off, what's the clear benefit of your product? If I'm a customer and I hire your product, what is your product going to do for me? And state it quickly and clearly. Why should I believe that your product is going to do that for me? Have you done this before? Do you have proof? Has somebody else used it to solve that problem? Give me a reason to believe that if I select your product, my problem's going to go away. And finally, what makes you different? All right, so you've got a product. Okay, so it'll make my product go away. But couldn't I get the same product from somebody else? Okay, what makes you or your company different from everybody else out there? Your USP has to deal with all three of these questions. Okay. One way, coming up with a USP can be a bit of a challenge, of course. Okay, what makes any product different? One way to go about doing that is to take a look at your product and list out all the features, and then for each feature, go ahead and figure out what the attribute of it is. You know, so for a given feature, what is the value from the customer's point of view of that particular feature? What's going to be the next evolution of the feature? The feature exists today, but what's it going to look like tomorrow? What would the customer's life be before they had the feature or after they had the feature? Will this particular feature result in any cost savings or revenue generation for the customer? Do other competitors have this feature, or are you the only one who has it?
If the customer gets it, how is their view of this feature going to change over time? Are they not going to care when they get it? But if you talk to them a month later, they'd say, I just can't imagine how I lived without it. And how does this feature work with maybe the existing products or solutions the customer already has in place? If you go through and do this for each one of your features, when you get done, what's going to happen is you're going to have a very clear vision of exactly what makes your product unique, and you can use that to build the USP for your particular product. All right, I've got one more free gift for you. I have a free booklet. I think it's like 46 pages long. It's called the STOMP System, the No Overview. Okay, and this is a detailed discussion of everything that we've talked about during this webinar for those people who learn best by reading about a new idea. Okay, so I've documented everything that we talked about. It gives you a chance to go back and read through it. So if you learn better by reading, good news, it's all been documented for you, and you'll find everything we talked about in more detail in this booklet. Okay, and once again, when the webinar is done, I'll send you a free link to that particular booklet. All right, so becoming a product manager is a continuing process, okay? We always want to learn more. We want to understand what we don't know. The best way to become a product manager is to get more training, okay? But the best type of training requires no travel, is filled with practical real-world information. You've got a full-time product management job. You need to be able to learn this stuff as quickly as possible, taking up the minimum amount of time. If you sit in the class and you have a professor talk to you, that's great, but when he's done, how much of that do you actually remember? You having the ability to review all the class information is always critical, and taken together, all this can dramatically reduce your learning curve. Now, what we did during this particular webinar is we went over what you need to do to launch a product. Okay, and we talked about the 5 different steps. We talked about how they all work together, and we talked about the different things that you need to do during each one of the stages there. The Blue Elephant Company is planning on offering another follow-on webinar, okay, and this one's going to be talking about how to go about launching a product. So we're going to take a deeper dive, and what we're actually going to do is we're going to take a particular company with a particular product, and we're going to go stepping through each one of the stages, okay, and we're going to show exactly what a product manager would do in that stage for that product, for that company, as far as segmenting the market, identifying the product requirements, identifying what the USP is, etc., etc. This webinar is going to be offered sometime in September, and there's going to be so much information in it that we're going to have to split it up between 2 separate webinars. Because you were on this webinar, I will make sure that you know about this. You will get a special discount offer to participate in it, but if you're interested, I would love to have you be in the audience for that one. Now, when this webinar is done, I'm going to send you an email, and in that email, you're going to get links to 6 different resources that are yours to have and to hold, okay? Right off the bat, you're going to get a video copy of this webinar, okay? You're going to get an MP3 copy of the webinar just in case you wanted to listen when you can't watch, okay? You're going to get the report, How to Create Product Requirements That Work. You're going to get the report, Market Segmentation Secrets. You're going to get the 45-page booklet, an overview of the no stage of the STOMP system that talks about everything that we covered in this particular webinar. And of course, you'll also get the certificate for completing the 2nd level and becoming a STOMP certified product manager. So thank you so much for spending time with me tonight. Hopefully you got some valuable information out of what we've covered. If you have any questions about the material that we covered tonight, feel free to send me an email. My email address, which I think you already have, but we'll make sure anyway, is simple. It's Jim, J-I-M, at Blue Elephant Consulting, all one word, .com. Excellent. We're all done here, guys. Thank you so much for your time. Have a great evening, and I'll talk to you later.